Automation. So what's this all about? That is maybe the topic that quite some of you came here today to hear more about this. Yes, this is about, if you want to call this a driverless car, the self-driving car, the robot car, the autonomous car. I would call it the automated vehicle because that is the technical term that is being established for this. And the easiest way why you might want to think why automation is maybe better than autonomous, as one of my colleagues said, well, the car is autonomous if the following happens, which is I ask the car to take me to the office, but instead it says, well, Sven, you're just overworked. I take you to the beach. Then we would call it autonomous. But so far it's just automated because it will take me to the office, and therefore just automates what I would otherwise do. So basically, summarizing this, the computer takes over in part the driving task from the human, and definitely with safety, which we saw earlier, 95% of all accidents, human error is at least a contributing factor. Computers don't get tired, don't get distracted by texting, don't get incapacitated by other substances or means, and don't overestimate themselves or underestimate the risk. So therefore, we can hopefully offset a lot of those challenges there. But then, how much does it really help us with emissions, with consumption, and with congestion? Because if I don't care anymore that I'm stuck in traffic, I might actually move out even further into the suburbs. My commute gets longer, and then we all just meet with our automated vehicles, and maybe even in special automated vehicle lanes and so on. But we don't really gain a whole lot. Maybe we just lose more space where vehicles are moving. So therefore, I really put these question marks, and these are serious question marks. We do have some researchers that are looking at this topic. What would it mean if people don't really need to appreciate or don't need to measure the time anymore that they lose in traffic? Might this be, in the end, something where we all lose a little bit more? But that is too early to call. Let's first look at how realistic is this scenario. And let's first ask the question, what actually is an automated car? Well, what an automated car is, it uses GPS technology so that it knows where it is on the planet and that it takes your order where you want to go with it. So that is basically GPS controlled. If in an ideal world, that's basically like just integrating a handheld GPS device into your vehicle, and then the turn left, turn right, keep straight prompts basically could already automate the entire car. Now what can happen? Many things can happen. There could be obstacles in the road. Obstacles, anything from a squirrel, if you will, to a truck that's maybe in your way. And you want to avoid these. And therefore, you're using laser technology, cameras, and radars that basically detect what's in front of the vehicle, and maybe also even more where exactly is the road that I want to stay on. And it looks like that probably these three kinds of object detection sensors are being used for what's called sensor fusion. So you basically take all three of them and try to match them, and you say, well, if they are all looking at the same thing, then probably there is really an object. It just goes laser, doesn't work terribly well in bad weather. Heavy rain and snowfall doesn't work too well. Radar has a hard time actually distinguishing a soda can from a person. The radar image is very much the same, but obviously you want to take very different actions for a soda can on the road as opposed to a person on the road. And both laser and radar don't do terribly well with color, but last time I came to a traffic light, color actually matters a lot. So therefore, we want to use all three of them, and even more wheel speed sensors. I don't want to go into detail. Inertial motion unit, you want to use, and then you feed all of this into the central processing unit of the vehicle. You can automate throttle, braking, and steering. That's basically how it works. Now, here's a chart where typically I crack the joke. Tomorrow there will be a test on this, but I'm not going to crack this joke today. It's basically the definitions of different levels of automation. Can you read it at all? Maybe not. It's basically SAE, which is Society of Automotive Engineers. It's BAST, that's the German Bundesanstalt für Straßenwesen, so basically the German Federal Highway Administration. And there's NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, so this is Washington, D.C. Department of Transportation. And they basically define what are the different levels of automation. That tells you already this will not come overnight. That's my statement. You might go to a different talk tomorrow from a great internet company just about 10 miles down on Highway 101. They might tell you 2017. We shall see. It's not that far out. So we will meet again in 3 years, and maybe that all happens. But basically, this is where the front line goes. And you see here the execution of the driving task, here the monitoring of what's happening, and here the fallback, and here basically the full system capability. And here you see below this red line the system. So the computer, the vehicle does everything by itself. And above the red line, the human does it. So basically, we have different levels where first the execution is being taken over by the computer, but the human still needs to monitor what's going on. And the next step is the human doesn't need to monitor anymore, just has to be there as a fallback system for the computer. And then system capability is basically a very long way of saying like just everything the computer can do, not even as a fallback scenario, the human is necessary. And this step, where the monitoring is not necessary anymore from the human, only the human has to be as a fallback. This is when you can start texting while driving. Don't do it now. This is when you can start doing it, because until then you have to monitor what's going on. This scenario, by the way, is very similar to what's happening in aircraft, where there are actually two highly trained and relatively well-paid professionals monitoring what the computer is doing. They're reading out loud to one another what they are doing. They're broadcasting to ground traffic control what they are doing. Even if anyone tells you, well, you know what, we have autopilot in planes, why can we not have it in our cars? It's a very different scenario. But they can probably not text while they land in SFO, I guess. At least they shouldn't. And that is the same with this monitoring. And this is where we are just scratching on the surface, where we're getting into systems now that basically fulfill this field here, which is the driver just needs to monitor, for instance, while stop-and-go traffic. Stop-and-go traffic, what is now called traffic jam assist, the vehicle can drive itself. The first companies rolled this out, and the driver just needs to monitor. Okay, what are the questions that we need to ask? Well, how well do these vehicles actually interact with the human-controlled vehicles? So with all of you who came with your car here today, and also with me on the bike, I confess, I don't always strictly follow the rules when I'm on my bike. Well, how does an automated vehicle deal with this? That has to be programmed in a line of software to follow exactly if there's like posted speed limit 65 miles an hour. It's not that 72 might be okay. It's probably 64.5, just to leave a little bit of leeway. So you might end up being the slowest vehicle on the road if you have an automated vehicle. You might be the only vehicle that's really stopping at a four-way stop sign. That means everyone else passes by, and your automated vehicle is very courteous and just sits there forever. And this is really where I say, well, traffic, tragically enough, we saw 34,000 people killed every year. But still, I might want to contend it's somewhat coordinated chaos that somehow works. And now we need to see if it actually still works if we put automated vehicles to it. Can we do this without massive infrastructure deployment? I have a little bit more about this later. When can we release the driver from the need to monitor the vehicle? That's the point. When does it actually make sense for the consumer to purchase such a vehicle? Because if you pay, let's say, an extra $3,000, $5,000 for a somewhat automated package, but you still need to monitor what it does, you're not allowed to do anything else while driving, it might not be such a great sales proposition. And will people actually feel safe and comfortable in it? And this is where we have quite some research, and I guess quite some of you maybe had the pleasure, the honor to know Professor Cliff Nass, who passed away tragically enough in November. He researched this field quite a bit. Can people trust an autonomous car? What information does the automated vehicle really communicate to the people within? If it all of a sudden slows down, you might wonder, what's going on here? Why are we slowing down? What is it? The vehicle might need to tell you, you know what, there's a backup half a mile in front of us, and we might want to slow down already a little bit. That is a very different situation as opposed to what's going on here. Do I trust this? And even how does it drive? Does it maybe drive too fast on a mountain road and you get maybe motion sick? Can you tell the computer, you know what, I don't feel well, I don't like the driving style? So there's a lot where, again, there's a human component in driving, and we need to see how we can get this into automated vehicle. And then certainly, does it become affordable for mainstream consumers, where we do see great research demonstrations, but these are not necessarily all components that we can have or that we can afford just like that. And this is where I think the vision and reality might be worlds apart. I do have a few videos here. Some of this, maybe you might know, this is the vehicle from Professor Sebastian Thrun, who demonstrated this vehicle at the DARPA Urban Challenge in 2007. Before that, in 2005, they had that at the Grand Challenge, slightly similar vehicle, or somewhat similar vehicle. It basically has this, what you saw earlier, laser scanner in front of the vehicle. It has radar technology. And it just merged into traffic, what you see here. The white Ford Tauruses there are basically driven by humans. And then the vehicle, basically you see the scanning radar on top of the vehicle that sends out 64 beams with 15 revolutions per second and picks up a lot of data points and then makes a decision. So that can be done if you map out in advance where you want to go. We have some other exciting research going on here. This is Professor Chris Gerdy, is also the faculty director of our Center for Automotive Research. And what Chris is telling us about here is basically what they do with their automated Audi TTS on racetracks. They are not. They are not working on a racing car series that doesn't need driver anymore. Basically what they do, you better should do on a closed course, because it's really figuring out if the vehicle can even be controlled by a computer at the limits of handling. And they are also learning from race car drivers how they handle the vehicle, so that hopefully a computer can also handle the car in an emergency situation. So this is all very exciting research that is happening here. And all of this, including this video that I'm not going to show you, but I'm sure that quite some of you have seen Steve Mahan, a visually impaired person who actually got in the Google car to go to a drive-through restaurant and pick up his dry cleaning without actually needing to drive, which shows a great vision. Don't get me wrong. The same vision actually that was portrayed in this, which is a book that my parents got around the time when I was born in the late 60s. It was talking about the future, and in the late 60s, some of you might remember the future was the year 2000. And they were talking about self-driving cars in the year 2000. Did not happen. Need to tell you, you didn't miss anything, it didn't happen. But still, it really is a great vision, what we could do. But this is where I say vision and reality are worlds apart. Not in terms of technology, that we are not reasonable about technology. I think we are not really reasonable about understanding and putting into our consideration what traffic means. Because this is what traffic looks like. There are so many unexpected things that can happen. And if you don't want to monitor the vehicle at all times, if you want the computer to have a solution for all of this programmed in its system, then this is really a long way to go. And also, now taking a look at what is really possible, the media wants us to think this is what driving looks like. And that certainly is an aspect of freedom and everything. But still, this is not necessarily what driving looks like, because very often driving looks like something like this, which are maybe some of the reasons on there why you raised your hand that you did not necessarily like to drive here today, which is distraction, whether that's by all the things that we should better do at home, or maybe that our little ones basically don't really understand that driving requires a lot of attention. Maybe something else required a lot of attention during the day, so we are all worked up in the evening. Maybe our best friends become our best enemies in the vehicle, or maybe they're outside the vehicle, or someone forgot to download the latest map software to the vehicle. So this is what driving looks like, and that's actually the motivation why we want to go automated as well, for safety reasons, but also because very often driving is not fun. Now, how do we get there? Here are a few steps where I say, well, there's traffic jam assist that is being rolled out, and that basically pretty much self-explanatory. It's that in very dense traffic, relatively slow speed, the vehicle can almost drive itself already. We are talking quite a bit about automated parking, automated valet parking. That you just drop off your vehicle and it finds its parking spot by itself. This is the, however you want to call it, GM calls it Super Cruise, Audi calls it piloted highway driving. I think all of these names tell you a lot, which is basically if you are on a mostly empty highway, you can sit back and need to see, monitor, or just maybe be there for an emergency. But then there's also something which is platooning of vehicles on a highway. Volvo in Sweden works a lot on this topic. But still our vision here, I don't give you a date, and even all these other dates, I really put a question mark there when we get there. But the title of this slide is Other Vehicle Automation Scenarios, because yes, we are talking a lot about our personal automobiles, how we can basically get the driver out of the loop, and that's certainly a very exciting and a very worthwhile scenario. But I also want to look at other things, and maybe some of you know that actually, going back to 1939, the GM Futurama scenario at the New York World Fair talked a lot about automated highways. And GM and RCA did a lot of efforts in the 1950s through the 60s on automated highways. And also our dear friends at PATH on the other side of the bay at UC Berkeley did a lot of work in the 1980s and the 1990s on automated highways. So maybe we need to revisit this, that we say, different than what we're talking about here, more and more intelligence to the vehicle, maybe putting more intelligence to the road, that we can coordinate traffic better. That might be very interesting. And then there's some things, not just talking about what's happening on the highway, but maybe really what's happening in the city, where this over here really is not a great scenario. But maybe we can use something like this, relatively slow moving in its operational area, very limited vehicle, which can be just in a shopping mall, maybe just in an amusement park, maybe in a seniors community, to move people around with a very much optimized vehicle that doesn't even have a steering wheel, and it really relies a lot on the infrastructure that you can move people around. So, which we call automated on-demand mobility, especially for urban areas. And there's already a lot happening in the agricultural field, in the mining industry, in container harbors, where you have actually quite a few vehicles roaming around without a human on them. And we can learn a lot from all of these. And therefore, the deployment scenario might actually look more like this. So this is already happening, especially Komatsu and Caterpillar need to be mentioned here are the leaders with automated mining trucks. And we can learn probably quite a bit what we can maybe do then in a parking lot scenario. Then these vehicles here, very slow moving, just for the urban area, small vehicles that can also help us a lot, basically, how we can build trust with these vehicles. What I had as a question on the slide, how do we interact with these vehicles? And we can see this already with vehicles that are only being used on a very limited deployment scale. And then the automated highway scenario, I really encourage to look at this again. And then hopefully this all comes together into a fully automated scenario of the future. Now, some people ask, well, what about the legality? Are we actually allowed to do this? Is it legal to have an automated car? And there I want to bring the attention to what a very much appreciated researcher at Stanford, Bryant Walker-Smith, has been researched for the last 3 years, legal aspects of automated vehicles. And he summarizes the situation as follows, that Nevada, Florida, and California, now we also need to add, and are happy to add, Michigan, New Jersey, and DC to it. They have passed regulation for what they call autonomous vehicles, which basically is some sort of automated vehicles. And in other states, the legislator is considering similar things. And a lot of lobbying is happening here. We can discuss who's lobbying there, but it's really a strong push often from the industry to do this. And that is all fine, and this is what you typically read in the media. But then, unfortunately, the headline is, Nevada legalizes self-driving cars. But that is not entirely true, because Bryant also tells us what it's not. Because it doesn't see that they just, in general, legalize those vehicles. It's very similar to smoking. Smoking is regulated in the state of California. That means you can go outside and smoke, but not in here. And that is very similar with these vehicles, automated vehicles. You can test. Testing is basically allowed. You can test those vehicles in the state of Nevada, state of California, and other states. But you cannot necessarily just sell a self-driving car to anyone, and you can drive from Reno to the Strip in Vegas and just rest until you get there. That is not the case right now. It might go there, we will see. And it also doesn't say that it's illegal anywhere else. It's just that they don't have regulation for it. So that really needs to be considered when we look at these automated vehicles. So to summarize all of this, we really have different categories of automated vehicles. And that's really what I want you to take home with you when you next time hear about self-driving cars or autonomous cars and so on. There's really a lot of vanilla in there, a lot of different gray tones. So we talked a little bit about the different levels of automation. They have names. They are called partial, conditional, high, and full automation. And then we talked quite a bit about the increasing deployment area. If it's just maybe in a pit mine operation, very closed area where I don't even get in as a normal citizen, then it's a limited deployment, maybe just in an amusement park. And then there's an unlimited deployment, basically every road you want to take it on. And we do have a lot of examples for this. I don't want to go into all of them. I would put the Google car here. Happy to discuss if it should be there or somewhere else, but I would not put it necessarily in the top right corner, which would be full automation, no driver necessary, wherever you want to go. That's not what it is. And then I would put this little urban mobility concept, I would put this here, and maybe the convoy, I would put it there, and the ultimate scenario still is there, where we still all hope that hopefully one day we will see this. Now, to summarize this in a similar way as we discussed the electrification topic as well, there are also two trends that we need to look at. One really is what's happening on the highway, what's going on there, and then there are some other mobility concepts. So we really have, there we go. We have the driver assistance in our personal automobiles, so more and more technology, mostly coming to the high-end premium vehicles. It then trickles down to the mainstream vehicles, and there the terms traffic jam assist, auto parking, and so on are happening, that more and more of this takes over the driving task from the human. And the other trajectory really is that I would call this flat out the personalization of the public transportation sector. So these are all these on-demand systems where some of this you can actually have already. At London Heathrow, for instance, they have an automated mobility concept. Or the AirTran at SFO, actually there is no driver, no conductor in there. But the difference obviously is some things are based or bound to rails, and we are talking more about something that has a virtual rail, basically GPS, but still obviously some similarities apply. With this, I want to move on, and there's a nice connection now to the next topic, which is communication, because if we go back to this slide, we actually need to realize that 3 of these examples that we already know require a communication link. So if we go to the platooning that I didn't spend too much time talking about, well, we basically have a communication link between the individual vehicles. And there's a great startup here also in Silicon Valley by the name of Peloton that is working on something like this. But there's a communication link between those vehicles. And if we talk about these things in the urban area, you might need a communication link with a centralized infrastructure, and certainly what Komatsu, for instance, has in the Rio Tinto aluminum mine operations in Australia, where they have a communication link to every vehicle. And that is really something that I don't really see enough in the discussion with the people who are working on self-driving cars or chauffeur or whatever you want to call it, where we need to understand, well, especially with all these things, how traffic actually happens. We need communication because we have communication in traffic today. It would not work without any of these things that we have here, which is basically eye contact. So if I try to cross a crosswalk without making eye contact to the car or to the driver, basically that just stopped at the crosswalk, I don't feel safe. Or if I don't really make eye contact with the law enforcement officer, I'm in trouble. So, and how do you do this with an automated vehicle? Don't get me wrong. If we had all just 100% automated vehicles, we could totally do this. But again, how do we do the mix with the existing system that we have?